You know that feeling, right? You read a book, you watch a tutorial, you sit through a whole lecture, and you're thinking, yep, got it, makes total sense. And then, when it comes time to actually do the thing, you just freeze? Yeah. That gap, that really frustrating space between what we know up in our heads and what we can actually do with our hands, that's what we're going to dig into today. I mean, it seems like it should be simple, doesn't it? If you have the information, you should be able to just apply it. But we all know from experience it is almost never that easy. And look, this gap isn't just about some personal frustration. In some fields, it can literally be a matter of life and death.
These aren't just hypotheticals. These images, they represent real, incredibly tragic events that human factors engineers have studied. Think about it. A catheter that could easily be connected to the wrong line. Vials of medicine that look so similar it's dangerous. A defibrillator with pads that don't even match the machine. In every single one of these cases, the healthcare workers involved knew what to do. They had the textbook knowledge. But a small flaw in the system, in the design of the tools they were using, created a situation where knowing just wasn't enough to stop a fatal mistake. This is the knowing-doing gap at its absolute most critical.
So the big question is, how do we bridge this gap? Well, we're going to map out the entire journey. First, we'll talk about the knowing-doing gap itself. Then, we'll look at climbing the skill ladder. After that, we'll dive into the power of reflection, which is huge. We'll explore the expert's intuition, that kind of magic they seem to have. And finally, we'll pull it all together with this really powerful idea called the praxis loop.
All right, let's dive right in. First up, the knowing-doing gap, or as we're calling it, the chasm between theory and action. Oh man, we've all been here. It's that feeling, right? The space between the perfect plan you have in your head and what actually happens in the real world. It's the brilliant speech you practiced in the mirror that just comes out all jumbled. It's the simple 5-ingredient recipe that somehow ends with you setting off the smoke alarm. It's the difference between understanding the physics of a bicycle and the scraped knees you get from actually learning how to ride it. This gap, this is where the real learning begins.
Okay, so if that gap is where all the learning happens, how do we actually get across it? That brings us right to our second section, climbing the skill ladder. To really understand how to bridge this gap, we need a map. And luckily, there's a great one. It's called the Dreyfus Model of Skill Acquisition, and it gives us a clear path from being a complete beginner to a total expert.
So this model lays out 5 really distinct stages on our journey. We all start out as a novice, right? We're just rigidly following the instructions, step by step. Then we become an advanced beginner, and we start to see how the rules fit into a bigger picture. Next up is the competent stage. This is where we can actually start to plan and take real ownership of the results. As we become proficient, something amazing happens. Intuition starts to kick in and guide our decisions. And then finally, we reach the level of expert where our performance is just fluid. It feels almost effortless, almost automatic.
Okay, now what's so fascinating here is when you put the beginning of the journey right next to the end. The novice, they're totally detached. They're just trying to follow the rules, almost like a robot. But the expert, wow, they see the whole picture, that holistic view. Their decisions are intuitive, fast, fluid. And this is key, they are deeply, personally invested in the outcome. So the journey isn't just about cramming more facts into your brain, it's a fundamental shift in how you see the world and how much you care.
So that brings up a really important question. How do we actually climb that ladder? How do we get from novice to expert? Well, that brings us to section 3, the power of reflection. And the secret, it turns out, isn't just practice, practice, practice. It's a very specific kind of practice, and it's all fueled by reflection.
Yeah, so the philosopher and educator Donald Schoen had this amazing insight. He argued that professionals don't get better just by doing their job over and over. They get better by thinking about their doing. He called this person a reflective practitioner. It's someone who is constantly actively looking back at their own performance, figuring out what worked, what didn't, and most importantly, why. It's basically about becoming a student of your own experience.
And Schoen gave us these 2 brilliant ideas to help with that reflection. First, you've got your espouse theory. This is what you say you do. It's the official plan, the textbook method, the company policy. But then there's your theory in use. And that's what you actually do when things get messy, when you're in the heat of the moment, guided by your habits and your gut. The gap between those two, that is a goldmine for learning. Just seeing that the gap exists is the first huge step to closing it.
Now, this kind of reflection isn't just sitting around and thinking. It's an active process, and it has a name, deliberate practice. It's just like this quote says, deliberate practice involves breaking skills into small components,
focusing intensely on problem areas and seeking immediate feedback. So you're not just playing the song over and over again and hoping you get better. You're isolating that one tricky chord progression. You're focusing all your energy on your weak spots, and you're getting feedback right away so you can make adjustments.
And this is such a perfect illustration of what that actually looks like. I mean, professional musicians don't just get together and jam. No way. They run mock recording sessions so they can hear every single tiny flaw. They break the band apart, rhythm section here, melody section there, to make sure every part is perfect on its own. And this one is my absolute favorite. They will deliberately practice making mistakes so they know exactly how to recover flawlessly when it happens live on stage. I mean, how cool is that? They're actively and strategically closing their own knowing-doing gaps.
So, okay, after thousands of hours of this kind of intense reflective practice, you finally get to the top of that ladder, expertise. And that brings us to our next section, which is all about that almost magical quality that experts seem to have, their intuition.
The philosopher Michael Polanyi actually gave this a name. He called it tacit knowledge. And basically, it's all the stuff you know how to do that you can't really explain or write down in a book. It's knowing how to ride a bike, not knowing that a bike requires balance. It's the master chef who just seasons by feel, or the veteran pilot who just gets a sense that something isn't right with the engine. It's that deep gut-level wisdom that only comes from years and years of experience.
And that's the classic picture of an expert, isn't it? The genius who just knows the answer instantly. But is that really the whole story? Is intuition enough? Can an expert really just run on instinct alone? Well, not quite. It turns out critics of this pure intuition model point out that relying only on your gut can lead to overconfidence, and that can lead to some really big mistakes, especially in complicated fields like medicine. A hunch, or recognizing a pattern, that's a powerful starting point for sure. But true experts don't just stop there. They're constantly testing their intuition with clear analytical reasoning. It's like this constant dance between their gut and their brain.
And this idea, this dance between intuition and analysis, brings us to our final section, where we're going to tie everything together, theory, practice, reflection, intuition, into one powerful model for learning that you can use for the rest of your life. And it's called the praxis loop.
Okay, so the word praxis comes to us from philosophy, and what it means is the combination, the synthesis, of theory and practice. But it's not just about taking a theory and applying it to the real world. It's about how our actions, in the real world, circle back to challenge and change and refine our theories in the first place. It's a constant, never-ending conversation between knowing and doing. So you see how this changes our whole picture? We've been talking about climbing a ladder, right? And a ladder implies there's a top, a final destination, a place where you can finally stop and say, I'm done, I'm an expert. But praxis? Well, it suggests something totally different. It suggests it's a loop you live inside. Mastery isn't some destination you finally arrive at. It's a continuous, dynamic process that you're always a part of. It's this endless loop of learning and doing, where you are forever both the student and the practitioner. So here's what the mastery loop looks like in action. First, you act. You go out and you do the thing. Then you reflect, just like that reflective practitioner. You step back and you analyze what just happened. From that reflection, you theorize. You update your mental model. You close that gap between what you thought would happen and what actually happened. And then, and this is the most important part, you act again. But this time, you're applying your new, refined theory. This right here, this is the engine of continuous improvement. And look, this framework, this isn't just for pilots or surgeons or professional musicians. This applies to literally anything you want to get better at. It could be your job, a hobby, even your relationships. So really, the only question left to ask is, where are you going to start your loop? What's one practice in your life that you could take a moment to really truly reflect on today?